So Jackie, thank you so much for coming tonight. We're here organizing an event to talk about what it means to be a foreign founder trying to win and make it in Silicon Valley. So I think that because of the work that you guys do at SVB, as well as the work that you specifically, do with Latin America. I have a bunch of people from Latin America here tonight. I'd love to just learn more about what are some of the common challenges that you see some of these people facing, and how do you guys typically provide value and address those?
Yeah, no, great question. So I'm part of the Global Gateway team at Silicon Valley Bank, which essentially is kind of the international hub for all of our founders in technology and VCs around the world. So our group is essentially to be a bridge to Silicon Valley. We operate in all countries where we do not have an office. So we actually do have international offices in the UK, China, and Israel. But everywhere else, such as Latin America, Russia, Eastern Europe, we have clients and there's technology and great innovation coming from those areas, and they need banking services. And not just banking services, but also support to get to Silicon Valley and also financing. So we do a variety of different things and to really truly be a partner to them, not only in their country, and so we also work with funds, but then to help them come here and set up a truly global business. Because as you know as well, global business is kind of what you have to do now to kind of make it big. So
can you tell us a little bit more about what are actually all the initiatives that you are helping lead at Google, and also give us an order of magnitude of how global the reach of your programs are?
Perfect. So one, we're happy you guys are here. That's a big part of what we do is work with partners around the world. So all that we do is provide the mentorship for startups around the world, and we're building the expertise of what helps startups in emerging markets be successful. We are operating in 26 countries around the world to date. Last year alone, we've provided over 100,000 of mentorship hours. And all of these hours are analyzed, measured by us in order to create the knowledge base of what makes startups successful and then share it back. When we look at startup ecosystems around the world, we have four stories we want to tell. One is obviously the success stories of the local startups. So we want to see a lot of startups coming from Brazil, from Mexico, from Argentina, from Colombia, from Vietnam, from Thailand. We want to showcase them here in Silicon Valley and help them build a successful company. The second thing that we do is we train mentors. So just in our accelerator here, we had 100 mentors from around the world, from about 20 countries. And what we've built is an amazing community of mentors around the world that work together. Third thing that we do is we work very closely with investors, because eventually they are the providers of fuel for all these ecosystems. So the more we have investors work with us and share the knowledge between Silicon Valley and emerging markets, we believe that's a huge area of influence. And the last thing we do is we also work with the governments. Eventually, government is a strong enabler for a startup ecosystem. So that's the fourth story that we're trying to tell through the program.
Mel Gates, my law firm, is a big international firm with 46 offices worldwide. We have an office in Sao Paulo, Brazil, in a lot of cities all around the world, Europe, Asia. And we do a lot of work with foreign founders and foreign startups that are either coming here to start their businesses here from scratch, or they want to set up a subsidiary here. And then we also work with the kinds of companies that you mentioned that are operating in Latin America, but have a lot of connections to Silicon Valley and maybe are getting funding from Silicon Valley-based venture capital funds or other US funds.
If I am an international founder working out of a local market, and a local market could be Brazil, could be Colombia, could be Indonesia, could be France, how is it that I am actually come here and raise money from Silicon Valley VCs? What is it that you've seen from a pattern recognition standpoint, some of your clients being always able to execute, and you're like, yeah, I see that, I'd love to represent that guy because I know that I can either help him win, or he's already on that path and I'm just going to be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's already so many ties between the local ecosystems like in Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Silicon Valley. A lot of the folks that I've worked with already have a lot of those connections of either they studied here for school, say at Stanford or Berkeley, or they came here for a program, they got involved in one of the incubators here, or they have other connections to Silicon Valley through people they know in their local countries. And a lot of times that's through sort of their own friends and family in their local countries.
And then you had to actually get out of Brazil in your case.
Yeah, in our case, desperately needed something better to manage our internal processes and workflows, and I tried to find what would be the best tool to track everything and gain efficiency in the business, and I couldn't find. That's when I had the idea of PipeFi, and then I kept looking around, trying to find something similar, and I couldn't find. That's when exactly I had the idea. Hey, this is not something local. Actually, it's a global problem. Every business needs to be better managed, and that's when I realized that actually I was in front of a global opportunity, and
Great. And then, and then the first step here, I would say probably was when you were accelerator, right? Like you went through the 500 startups program. What was your decision when you applied? And like, what were some of the things that being part of the program actually brought you as a result of it? Meaning, if I'm a founder, I'm watching this and I'm like, I'm not in Silicon Valley yet. Is it worth for me applying to one of these programs? What it can do for my startup and my life? And for you, your very first step here was going through an acceleration program, right? You went through YC. And how was that basically in terms of like how much did that actually change your next steps as a company?
Curiously enough, Y Combinator was the one place where
Before moving out here, I got to come out here a few times to meet with people, to meet with some of our users and customers, and with people who are in our space. And what I got to realize is that Silicon Valley really is where technology happens. So this is where you see the technology companies, the developers, the big startups, and it just made a lot of sense for me to move here. So I think it was a realization that was built over time rather than one moment.
Great. And then, what were some of the first steps that you faced when you actually made that decision, right? Like I'm going, and then what?
I feel like first of all is figuring what you're going to do when you get here. So, I kind of try to imagine myself just landing here in like SFO with a suitcase and a backpack. And like, what happens then? Like, how do you get to know people? How do you build your network? How do you kind of replicate the same kind of network and environment I had in Israel, where I come from, out here?
And I think that you probably have one of the most interesting stories because you're like one of the youngest founders that have been ever funded and raised a round led by Andreessen Horowitz. So how were you able to achieve that? Aside from having an excellent, great business that is tackling a huge market, which, I think everyone knows that that's a requirement to raise venture financing. But ultimately, it still takes a lot of work to actually raise a financing round, right?
Yeah, and I feel like what we ended up doing is building a big company, going after a need, as you said, bringing in real use cases and real customers, and then trying to show it in a compelling way to a lot of the VC investors out here in Silicon Valley, and that's what sold to them. And I think that it resonated with what you're looking for.
As an immigrant founder, as the first Japanese founder to actually have been through a program like Y Combinator, what were some of the challenges that you faced when you came here? Right, I think that a lot of people just immediately they'll just show up, come here and think that they'll be able to build a company and raise money from investors. I'd love to just kind of like share a little bit about your story. Well, what were like the first 90 days, some of the challenges that you have faced, and the lessons learned?
Yep. So in 2011, we decided to start a company. We were having a choice whether to start in Japan, where we're from, and also like come to San Francisco and start a company here. We thought there's bigger chance and dream in here, so we just came here. We were just reading TechCrunch, all tech articles. We thought if you come to San Francisco, you can meet investors on street and raise money from there on spot. Obviously, that didn't happen, so that was a long story. But we got into Y Combinator in 2012, and then since then, like everything has been changed.
What do you think are some of the common challenges that as a foreign founder you face when you come here?
Yeah, I think that realizing the reality is the first thing. Like when you look at all the articles, when you know that San Francisco is the biggest city, you think that there are a lot of investors who wanna, give you money. But at the same time, the reality is that there are so many other startups as well that are trying to raise money from investors, that are trying to recruit the same talent, trying to talk to the same customer that you're trying to acquire as well. So realize the fact that realize the reality that there are so many number of entrepreneurs and startups trying to do a similar thing as you, and you have to outstand. You have to make sure to be the unique startup. Otherwise, you're going to be one of the million startups in the world.